The first message came to Earth on a cold winter night in the year 1687. A radio telescope that would not be invented for another 300 years could not receive it. The signal bounced off the atmosphere and disappeared into space. The aliens tried again, and again. For decades, they sent their greetings into the void, never knowing that the small blue planet they targeted had people who still traveled on horses and fought with swords. By the time humans built their first radio receivers, the messages had become more urgent. The Galactic Concord, a union of 47 spacefaring species, wanted to welcome Earth into their family. They spoke of trade, of shared knowledge, of protection against the dangers of the universe. Their broadcasts painted beautiful pictures of cities floating among the stars, of medicine that could cure any disease, of peace that had lasted for thousands of years. Earth received these messages in 1934. A young scientist named Park's grandfather was the first to decode them. He told no one except the government. The government told no one except other governments. Within 5 years, every major nation on Earth knew the truth. They were not alone in the universe, and something out there wanted to be their friend. But humans were suspicious creatures. They had lived through too many wars, too many broken promises, too many times when strangers came offering friendship and left with everything valuable. The world leaders made a decision that would shape the next 3 centuries. They would listen, they would learn, but they would not answer. Park was 63 years old now. His hair had turned silver, and his face carried the weight of secrets that would terrify ordinary people. He was the director of the Global Defense Initiative, an organization that officially did not exist. For 40 years, he had dedicated his life to a single purpose: preparing humanity for the day when the aliens would stop waiting for an answer and come looking for one. That day had finally arrived. Stood in the command center, a massive underground facility built beneath the mountains of Korea. Screens covered every wall, showing data from satellites and sensors scattered across the solar system. The room was filled with the soft sound of computers and the quiet voices of technicians monitoring their stations. Lieutenant walked up beside him. She was 31 years old, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a mind that worked faster than most computers. She had spent her entire career in this room, watching the stars for signs of visitors. She had always known this moment would come, but knowing something and experiencing it were very different things. 12 vessels, she reported, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. They entered our solar system 6 hours ago. They passed Jupiter without slowing down. Current trajectory puts them in Earth orbit within 18 hours. Studied the holographic display floating in the center of the room. The alien ships were beautiful in a way that made his skin crawl. They were shaped like silver teardrops, smooth and elegant, without any visible weapons or engines. They moved through space as if gravity meant nothing to them. "Any communication attempts?" he asked. "Constant," replied. "They are broadcasting on all frequencies, standard greeting protocols. They identify themselves as a diplomatic mission from the Galactic Concord. They say they come in peace." Almost smiled. Everyone always came in peace. The Europeans came to the Americas in peace. The colonizers came to Africa in peace. Peace was just a word people used before they took what they wanted. "Do we respond, sir?" asked. "Not yet." The young lieutenant wanted to ask why, but she already knew the answer. She had studied the same files, listened to the same intercepted communications, analyzed the same patterns that had spent his life collecting. The Galactic Concord was not what it pretended to be. On the surface, the Concord looked like paradise. Dozens of species living together in harmony, sharing technology and resources, exploring the universe as partners. But beneath that beautiful surface, there was something darker. The communications they intercepted told a different story. Species that joined the Concord gave up their military forces for protection. They opened their economies to conquered trade, which always seemed to benefit the older members more than the newer ones. Their cultures slowly changed, their traditions fading away as they adopted conquered standards. Their populations moved to conquered stations and conquered colonies, leaving their home worlds empty. Within a few generations, most species lost their identity entirely. They became citizens of the conquered, nothing more. Their languages died. Their histories were forgotten. They were absorbed so completely that they forgot they had ever been anything else. And those who resisted, the communications about them were rare and carefully worded. There were references to tragic conflicts and necessary interventions. Species that said no to the conquered did not seem to exist anymore. Had spent decades piecing together the truth. The conquered was not a union of equals. It was an empire wearing the mask of friendship. And now that empire had come to Earth. "Show me the fleet status," he said. Pressed a button, and the holographic display changed. The alien vessels disappeared, replaced by something that would have shocked the galactic conquered if they could see it. Scattered throughout the solar system, hidden in asteroid fields and behind moons and in the darkness between planets, were thousands of human ships. They were not pretty like the alien vessels. They were angular and brutal, built for one purpose only: war. Each one carried weapons that had been designed specifically to fight enemies humanity had never met but had spent generations studying. They had analyzed every piece of conquered technology they could observe from the intercepted communications. They had built counters to weapons they had only seen described in alien reports. They had prepared for every scenario they could imagine. And they had done it all in secret. The world above knew nothing. Ordinary people went about their lives, worrying about jobs and relationships and politics, never knowing that a shadow government had been building an army in the stars. Every major nation contributed resources and personnel, setting aside their differences for the sake of survival. It was the greatest cooperation in human history, and it was completely invisible. Looked at the display showing Earth's hidden strength. 200 years of work, trillions of dollars spent, millions of people dedicating their lives to a secret they could never share, all of it leading to this moment. "They think we are primitive," he said quietly. "They think we have been sitting here, deaf and blind, waiting for someone to come and save us." "Should we show them the truth?" asked. Shook his head. "Not yet. Let them land their ambassador. Let them make their offer. Let them believe they are dealing with children who do not understand the game." He turned away from the display and walked toward his office. At the door, he paused and looked back at. "Humanity has been quiet for 300 years, he said. "When we finally speak, I want our words to mean something. I want the entire galaxy to hear us, and I want them to understand that our silence was never weakness." Nodded, understanding completely. The aliens had mistaken patience for ignorance. They had confused caution with inability. They were about to learn that humans were very good at waiting, and they were even better at making sure their waiting was worth something. 18 hours until the alien fleet arrived. 18 hours until the greatest performance in human history began. 18 hours until Earth started pretending to be exactly what the conquered expected. The trap was set. All they had to do was wait for their guests to walk into it. Ambassador had visited 43 worlds in his long career. He had welcomed 17 species into the galactic conquered. He had seen wonders that most beings could not imagine. But as his shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, he felt something he had not experienced in centuries: uncertainty. The humans had finally responded to their hails. The message was short and formal. They would receive one ambassador for preliminary discussions. Landing coordinates had been provided. No other vessels would be permitted to approach the planet. Found this amusing. These primitives, with their chemical rockets and simple satellites, thought they could give orders to the conquered. He had allowed it only because diplomacy required patience. Soon enough, they would understand their place in the universe. The shuttle broke through the clouds and got his first look at the landing site. He had expected something primitive, A field perhaps, or a crude concrete platform. Instead, he found a facility that made his heart's beat faster. The landing platform was enormous, easily large enough to hold 100 shuttles his size. It was made of some dark material that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Around the edges stood tall structures that looked like communication towers, but their design was unlike anything in conquered databases. And standing in the center, waiting for him, was a human honor guard. They wore black uniforms decorated with silver symbols. Their faces were calm and expressionless. They carried no visible weapons, but something about the way they stood made nervous. These were not farmers or merchants. These were soldiers. The shuttle landed softly, checked his translator one more time, adjusted his diplomatic robes, and stepped outside. The air was cold and clean, carrying a faint scent of flowers and rain. He took a deep breath, filling his 4 lungs, and walked toward the waiting humans. A woman stepped forward to meet him. She was not young, but she moved with the confidence of someone who had faced death many times and won. Her hair was cut short, and a scar ran along the side of her face from her temple to her jaw. Her eyes were the most unsettling thing about her. They looked at the way a predator looks at prey. "Welcome to Earth," she said. Her voice was calm and measured without any warmth. "I am General O. I will escort you to the council." His translator handled her words easily, but it struggled with something beneath them. There was a tone, an attitude that did not fit his expectations. This woman was not impressed by him. She was not afraid of him. She was not even curious about him. "Thank you, General," replied, using his most diplomatic voice. "I am ambassador of the hegemony, representing the galactic conquered. I bring greetings from 47 species who wish only friendship and cooperation with your people." Nodded once, "Follow me." She turned and walked toward a large building at the edge of the platform. Followed, his long legs easily matching her pace. The honor guard fell in behind them, their footsteps perfectly synchronized. As they walked, studied his surroundings. The technology here was strange. Some of it looked primitive, like the vehicles he could see in the distance that seemed to run on wheels. But other things were clearly advanced. The towers around the landing platform hummed with energy patterns he did not recognize. The building ahead had no visible doors, but a section of the wall slid open silently as they approached. Inside, the corridors were clean and bright. Workers in identical gray uniforms moved past them without stirring. Everything was efficient, organized, controlled. This was not the chaos had expected from a pre-contact civilization. They reached a large door marked with symbols. Translator could not read. Stopped and turned to face him. "The council is waiting," she said. "I should warn you, Ambassador. They already know why you are here. They know what the conquered is. They know what happens to species who accept your welcome. If you came here to lie, you will fail. If you came here to threaten, you will regret it. If you came here to negotiate honestly, you will find us reasonable." Stared at her. This was impossible. How could primitives know anything about the conquered? They had only been receiving broadcasts for a few centuries. They did not have the technology to intercept secure communications or decode military frequencies. "I do not understand," he said carefully. "What do you think you know about us?" Smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Everything." The doors opened and entered the council chamber. 12 humans sat around a curved table. They represented different ages, different appearances, different backgrounds, but they all wore the same expression: calm, patient, dangerous. At the center sat an old man with white hair and kind eyes that hid something sharp beneath them. He rose as approached and extended his hand in what the ambassador recognized as a human greeting gesture. "Ambassador," the old man said, "I am Councilman, please sit, we have much to discuss." Took the offered seat, his mind racing. This was all wrong. The script he had prepared, the speeches about friendship and opportunity, suddenly felt useless. These humans were not going to be impressed by promises of technology or protection. They already knew the truth. "You seem surprised," observed. "Did you expect to find savages waving sticks at your shuttle?" "I expected," admitted, "to find a civilization that needed our help." And now, looked around the table, meeting each pair of human eyes in turn. Some were young, some were old. Some were men, some were women. But all of them looked back at him without fear or wonder. They looked at him like he was a puzzle they had already solved. "Now I am not sure what I have found," he said. Nodded. "Let me help you understand. 347 years ago, we received your first broadcast. We decoded it within a decade. We have been listening to your communications ever since. Not just the public broadcasts, all of it." Felt cold spread through his body. "That is not possible. Our secure channels use quantum encryption that no primitive species could break." A young woman at the end of the table laughed softly. "Primitive, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means." "Lieutenant," said, introducing her. "She leads our communications intelligence division. Perhaps she can explain." Leaned forward. "Your encryption is based on the assumption that no one outside the conquered has developed quantum computing. We built our first quantum computer 83 years ago. Since then, we have been reading your secure channels like they were children's books." His mind reeled. 83 years. That meant humans had possessed this technology for most of the time the conquered had been broadcasting to them. They had been listening to everything. Every diplomatic conversation, every military report, every secret plan. "You know about the integrations," he said quietly. "We know about everything," replied. "We know that 17 species have joined the conquered since you started contacting us. We know that 11 of them no longer exist as independent cultures. We know about the who refused your offer and disappeared from the galaxy within 50 years. We know about the who asked too many questions and suffered a tragic accident that destroyed their home world." The room was silent, realized that his hands were shaking. "You have been watching us for 300 years, he whispered. "You know what we are, and you never responded." General spoke from her position by the door. "We responded in the only way that mattered. We prepared." "Prepared for what?" Councilman stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. "For this moment, Ambassador. The moment when the conquered would stop waiting and come to claim us. The moment when we would have to choose between submission and war." He turned back to face. "We have made our choice. Now you must make yours. You can return to your fleet and report what you have learned. You can tell them that Earth is not what they expected. Or you can try to threaten us and learn firsthand what humans do to those who threaten their home." Sat in silence, his entire understanding of this mission crumbling around him. He had come to welcome primitives into the conquered. Instead, he had found something else entirely, something the galaxy had never encountered before. A species that had been watching them all along, learning, preparing, and waiting. Fleet Commander stood on the bridge of the conquered flagship, staring at his display screens in disbelief. Something was happening on Earth, and none of his sensors could explain it. Energy readings were spiking across the planet. Massive power surges were coming from locations that should not have any advanced technology. The humans' primitive satellites were moving into new formations, and their communications had gone completely silent. "Report," he demanded. His tactical officer, a young named, shook his head in confusion. "Commander, I am detecting launch signatures from multiple locations, not from Earth's surface, from everywhere." The main display flickered, then changed. Felt his blood freeze in his veins. Ships were appearing, not primitive rockets or clumsy shuttles, real ships, warships. They were emerging from behind Earth's moon, from the asteroid belt, from hidden stations near Jupiter and Saturn. Hundreds of them, then thousands. "That is not possible," whispered. The human vessels were unlike anything in conquered records. They were angular and aggressive, painted in dark colors that made them hard to see against the blackness of space. They moved with precision that spoke of experienced crews and advanced technology, and they were everywhere. On Earth, Ambassador watched the same display from the council chamber. The holographic projection showed the full extent of humanity's hidden fleet, surrounding his diplomatic mission like predators circling prey. Admiral stood beside the display, explaining calmly. She was a small woman with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a severe style. Her uniform was simple and practical, without any decorations or medals. But her eyes held the quiet confidence of someone who had commanded fleets in battles the galaxy knew nothing about. "We built our first faster-than-light vessel 80 years ago," she said. "It was crude and slow, but it worked. Since then, we have been busy." Stared at the display. The human ships outnumbered his fleet by more than 100 to 1, and from what his sensors had shown him, each of those ships was more than a match for a conquered vessel. "How," he managed to ask, "how did you hide all of this?" "We learned from our own history," Councilman replied. "Humans have always been good at keeping secrets. We built our ships in underground facilities and launched them from hidden bases. We trained our crews in simulations until they were ready. We established colonies on worlds the conquered has never surveyed. We did all of this while pretending to be primitive, while your diplomats laughed at our chemical rockets and fragile space stations." Lieutenant added more details. "Your scouts visited our system 12 times over the past 2 centuries. Each time, we showed them exactly what they expected to see. A developing species, barely capable of reaching their own moon, centuries away from being a threat. They never looked deeper because they never imagined they needed to." Thought about all the reports he had read before this mission. Earth was classified as a low-priority contact, a simple integration that would take perhaps 50 years. The humans were described as emotional and divided, fighting among themselves over meaningless differences. They were supposed to be easy. "Your own nature helped us," General said, reading his expression. "The conquered has become arrogant over the. You assume that any species without your level of technology must be inferior. You never consider that they might simply be hiding." "But why?" asked. "Why go to such lengths? If you knew about us for 3 centuries, why not make contact? Why not join the galactic community openly?" The council members exchanged looks. It was who answered. "Because we were not ready. We knew that the conquered does not accept equals. You absorb species, you do not welcome them. If we had revealed ourselves 50 years ago or even 20 years ago, you would have seen us as a threat. You would have sent fleets to contain us. You would have tried to destroy our shipyards and kill our scientists. We could not allow that." "So you waited," said slowly. "You waited until you were strong enough to resist." "We waited until we were strong enough to win," corrected him. "There is a difference." The holographic display shifted again. Now it showed not just the human fleet but projections of their capabilities. Weapons systems that operated on principles conquered science did not understand. Shields that could absorb attacks that should vaporize a ship. Engines that made conquered drives look slow and clumsy. Felt true fear for the first time in centuries. "What do you want?" he asked. Walked around the table and stood directly in front of the ambassador. Despite being shorter than, he somehow seemed to look down at him. "We have a question for the conquered," he said. "One question. How you answer it will determine everything that follows." "Ask," replied, his voice barely steady. "The galactic conquered has existed for 8,000 years. In that time, many species have been welcomed into your union. Some accepted gladly. Some needed convincing, but some refused. They wanted to remain independent to chart their own course through the stars." Paused, his eyes boring into us. "What happened to them, Ambassador? What happened to the species who said no?" Opened his mouth to respond with the standard diplomatic answer. "Tragic conflicts. misunderstandings, accidents. But looking at the humans around him, he knew they would not believe such lies. They had been listening to conquered communications for over 3 centuries. They already knew the truth. "I cannot answer that question," he admitted. "Cannot or will not." Both, slumped in his seat, suddenly feeling very old. The answer is not something the conquered speaks about openly. It is not recorded in our public histories, but you already know, do you not? You would not be asking if you did not already know. Admiral nodded. "We know what happened to the... We intercepted the military orders that sent 700 warships to their home system. We decoded the reports describing how their cities were reduced to ash. We read the final communications from their leaders, begging for mercy that never came. We know about the..." Lieutenant added. "The asteroid impact that destroyed their world was remarkably precise. It struck their capital city during a session of their ruling council. The probability of a natural asteroid hitting that exact location at that exact time was effectively zero. We know about the continued. Every species that refused the conquered's welcome met the same fate. They were erased from history. Their worlds were either destroyed or colonized by conquered species. Their people were scattered, enslaved, or exterminated." He leaned closer too. "The conquered has never encountered a species that could say no and survive. That is about to change." Sat in silence for a long moment. Everything he had believed about his mission, about the conquered, about the nature of galactic civilization, was crumbling around him. He had spent his career bringing primitive species into the fold, genuinely believing he was helping them. Now he saw the truth that had been hidden behind diplomatic smiles and promises of friendship. The conquered was not a family, it was a trap. And Earth had refused to walk into it. "What will you do now?" he finally asked. General smiled that predators smile again. "That depends on your fleet commander. Right now, he is watching our ships surround his fleet. He is trying to decide whether to fight or flee. We are giving him time to make the right choice. If he chooses to fight," Admiral answered with quiet certainty, "then he will lose, and the conquered will learn that Earth's silence was never weakness, it was preparation." Thought about a competent but unimaginative officer who had never faced a real enemy. He thought about the 12 ships in his fleet, designed for diplomacy rather than war. He thought about the thousands of human warships surrounding them. "He will ask for reinforcements," said. "He will call for a larger fleet." Nodded, "We are counting on it." The ambassador stared at him in confusion. "You want them to send more ships?" "We want the galaxy to see what happens when those ships arrive. We want every species in the conquered to witness what Earth can do, and when they see it, we want them to ask themselves a simple question." Turned to look at the display showing humanity's hidden armada, the fleet that had been waiting in the darkness for nearly a century. If the humans could hide this from us, what else might they have hidden? And what would happen if we made them angry? Understood then. The humans were not just defending themselves, they were sending a message to the entire galaxy. Earth had been silent for 300 years. When it finally spoke, everyone would listen. The Conquered's response came faster than anyone expected. Within 3 days, a war fleet of 40 vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. They were not diplomatic ships. These were battle cruisers, armed with weapons that had crushed dozens of rebellions across the galaxy. Fleet Admiral commanded from the flagship Eternal Justice. He was old and experienced, a veteran of 17 pacification campaigns. He had seen species threaten the conquered before. He had watched them burn. These humans would be no different. "All ships advance to combat positions," he ordered. "We will teach these primitives the cost of defiance." His tactical display showed the human fleet clearly. They outnumbered him badly but was not concerned. Conquered technology was superior. Conquered training was superior. These humans had never fought a real space battle. They would break and run at the first exchange of fire. But as his fleet moved deeper into the system, something strange happened. The human ships did not retreat. They did not scatter. Instead, they began to move with a coordination that makes blood run cold. Watching from the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Commander studied the approaching conquered fleet with calm interest. She was 39 years old and had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. Every simulation, every training exercise, every sleepless night studying conquered tactics had led to this. Lieutenant Shin stood beside her, monitoring sensor data. She was young, only 26, but she had the sharp mind of a natural tactician. Her fingers moved across her console with practiced ease. "They are using Standard Formation 7, reported. Battle cruisers in the center support ships on the flanks. Classic Conquered doctrine. Nodded. They expect us to engage head-on. They think superior firepower will win the day. Should we disappoint them? Oh, yes. Opened a channel to the entire fleet. Her voice was steady, without any trace of fear or excitement. She might have been ordering coffee rather than commanding history's first battle between humans and aliens. All units execute pattern midnight. Remember your training, watch your formations, and show these visitors what silence sounds like. The human fleet moved. Admiral watched in growing confusion as the enemy ships began to shift. They were not forming battle lines or preparing for a frontal assault. Instead, they were breaking into dozens of smaller groups, spreading out across the system in patterns that made no tactical sense. "What are they doing?" he demanded. His tactical officer shook his head. "Unknown, Admiral. They are not using any formation in our database. Their movements appear random, but the coordination is too precise for that." "Then it is a trick. All ships continue advance. Target the largest concentration of enemy vessels." The conquered fleet pushed forward. Their weapons powered up, ready to deliver death to anyone who opposed them. Allowed himself a small smile. Whatever the humans were planning, it would not save them. Then the first missiles struck. They came from everywhere. Not from the ships ahead, but from asteroids, from debris fields, from empty space that should have been safe. Conquered shields flared under the assault. Damage reports flooded in from across the fleet. "Where are they coming from?" shouted. "We cannot determine the source," his tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. "The enemy has concealed launch platforms throughout the system. We are flying through a minefield." Before could respond, the human ships attacked, but they did not charge forward in a glorious assault. Instead, they struck from the flanks and rear, hitting weak points and disappearing before the conquered guns could target them. They moved like ghosts, appearing and vanishing, never staying in one place long enough to be destroyed. On the Eternal Dawn, Commander watched the battle unfold exactly as planned. The conquered fleet was designed for conventional warfare, for standing battles where superior firepower decided the outcome. They had never faced an enemy that refused to play by their rules. "Group 7 target their rear shields," she ordered. "Group 12 disable that cruiser's engines. Group 3 fall back and reload." Lieutenant provided constant updates. Enemy flagship is turning to present forward weapons. 3 support ships are breaking formation to pursue Group 8. Let them, Group 15, take advantage of the gap. The battle was chaos for the conquered and perfect order for the humans. Every move made was anticipated. Every tactic he tried was countered. His ships were being picked apart piece by piece, and he could do nothing to stop it. 11 minutes after the first shot was fired, it was over. Admiral stared at his display in shock. Half his fleet was disabled, drifting helplessly with dead engines and shattered weapons. The other half had surrendered after watching their comrades fall, and the humans had not lost a single ship. His voice came through on the communication channel, calm and polite. Admiral, this is Commander of Earth's First Response Fleet. Your ships are disabled, but your crews are unharmed. We did not come here to kill. We came here to demonstrate. Demonstrate what? Managed to ask. That the Conquered's time of easy conquests is over. That there is a species in this galaxy that will not submit. That silence does not mean weakness. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of centuries of preparation. We have captured 36 of your vessels and their crews. They will be treated well and returned to conquered space unharmed. They carry a message for your leaders. On Earth, Ambassador watched the battle's conclusion from the council chamber. He had witnessed many conflicts in his long life, but nothing like this. The humans had not just defeated the conquered fleet. They had dismantled it with surgical precision, demonstrating complete mastery of space warfare. Councilman stood beside him, his expression unreadable. Your admiral made a mistake, said quietly. He assumed that because we had never fought in space, we did not know how, but we have been studying your battles for 3 centuries. We know every tactic you have ever used. We know every weakness in your formations. We know exactly how to hurt you without destroying you. Why asked, why not destroy them? You had the power. General answered from across the room. Because dead ships carry no messages. Destroyed fleets teach no lessons. We wanted survivors who could return to the conquered and report what they saw. What will they report? Admiral smiled grimly. They will report that Earth is not primitive, that humans are not weak, that the conquered has finally encountered something it cannot absorb, cannot destroy, cannot ignore. Director Park entered the chamber, a data tablet in his hand. He had been coordinating the battle from the command center, but now his work was complete. Commander reports that all prisoners are secured, he said. Our ships are escorting the disabled conquered vessels to a safe location. No casualties on either side. Lieutenant looked up from her station. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the conquered. They are requesting immediate diplomatic contact. The room fell silent. This was the moment they had been preparing for, the moment when Earth would finally speak. Turn 2, Ambassador, I believe your people want to talk to us. Would you like to help facilitate that conversation? Thought about everything he had witnessed. The hidden fleet, the impossible technology, the battle that had shattered conquered assumptions. These humans had been underestimated for 300 years, and they had used every moment of that time to prepare for this day. What are your terms? He asked. His expression did not change. We will join the Galactic Conquered, as equals, full voting rights, complete sovereignty over our territory, no integration of our military, no forced adoption of conquered culture, non-negotiable terms. The Conquered has never accepted such terms. Then the Conquered has never dealt with Earth. Looked out the window at the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, the shattered remnants of the most powerful fleet the Conquered had ever sent to a first contact mission were drifting helplessly. Somewhere up there, human ships were patrolling the solar system, waiting to see what would happen next. I will convey your terms, he said finally. But I must warn you, the Conquered does not respond well to demands. Spoke for the first time, his voice soft but carrying a weight that filled the room. Neither do we. The Grand Assembly of the Galactic Conquered had not gathered in full session for over 2,000 years. The last time, they had voted to integrate the by force. That species no longer existed. Now, representatives from all 47 member species filled the massive chamber, their voices creating a roar that shook the ancient walls. Supreme Chancellor stood at the center podium, waiting for silence. He was the most powerful being in the known galaxy, leader of an empire that had crushed every challenge it had ever faced. But today, for the first time in his long life, he felt something that might have been doubt. Ambassador walked slowly to the testimony platform. He had aged visibly since his mission to Earth. His scales had lost their shine, and his movements were slower than before. What he had witnessed had changed him in ways he still did not fully understand. "Tell us," commanded, "tell us about these humans." Looked out at the assembled representatives. He saw arrogance in their faces, the confidence of beings who had never truly been challenged. He had worn that same expression when he first descended to Earth. Now it seemed almost foolish. "I went to Earth expecting to find primitives," he began. "Creatures barely capable of space travel, eager for the gifts the conquered could offer them. I found something very different." He activated the holographic display, showing images of the human fleet, the battle, the impossible technology that should not have existed. "The humans have been listening to our broadcasts for 347 years, not just the public transmissions, everything. They decoded our quantum encryption within decades of building their first computers. They have been reading our secure communications since before any of us were born." The chamber erupted in disbelief. Delegates shouted questions and denials, raised his hand for silence. "Continue," he ordered. "They used that time to prepare," said. "While we were laughing at their primitive rockets, they were building warships in underground bases. While we were planning their integration, they were establishing colonies we never detected. While we were confident in our superiority, they were learning exactly how to defeat us." He showed the footage of the battle. 40 conquered warships, the pride of the fleet, being systematically destroyed by vessels that should not have existed. Not a single human ship lost. Not a single conquered crew member killed, because the humans had chosen mercy when they could have chosen annihilation. "This is the message they sent with our survivors," said. He activated a recording, and a human voice filled the chamber. It was Commander, speaking with the calm certainty of someone who has already won. "People of the Galactic conquered, Earth has been watching you for 3 centuries. We know what you are. We know what you do to species that refuse your welcome. We know about and all the others you erased from history. We will not share their fate." The recording continued. "We do not want war. We do not seek conquest, but we will not submit. We have spent 300 years becoming strong enough to say no, strong enough to make that word mean something. Earth wishes to join the conquered as equals with full rights and complete sovereignty. Accept our terms and we can build something better together. Refuse and learn why our silence lasted so long." The recording ended. The chamber was absolutely still. Stepped forward, his expression dark with anger. "They threaten us. These creatures who were building mud huts while we sailed between stars. We will send 100 ships, 1,000. We will burn their world to ash." "You could try," said quietly, "but I do not think you would succeed." "Are you defending them?" "I am telling you the truth," met the Chancellor's eyes without flinching. "I have walked among them. I have seen their history. These are not ordinary beings. They fought wars against each other that killed millions. They built weapons capable of destroying their own planet. They survived plagues, famines, and disasters that would have ended most species, and through all of it, they became stronger." He gestured at the holographic display, showing Earth's hidden fleet. "While we were conquering the stars, they were conquering themselves. They learned to work together, to set aside their differences, to build in secret. They took their paranoia, their suspicion, their refusal to trust, and they turned it into strength. They made themselves into exactly what they needed to be, and they did it without us ever knowing." A representative from the collective stood. "Then we negotiate. We offer them favorable terms. We bring them into the conquered slowly, as we have done with others." "They already know about that," replied. "They know that favorable terms become chains over time. They know that slow integration leads to absorption. They have been watching us for 300 years. Every trick we have ever used, they have studied and prepared for." Slammed his fist on the podium. "Then what do you suggest? That we simply accept their demands, that we treat them as equals when they are not?" Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, His voice was heavy with the weight of understanding that had taken him a lifetime to reach. I suggest that we accept their demands because they are equals. Perhaps the first true equals the conquered has ever encountered. He turned to address the full assembly. We have grown comfortable in our power. We have forgotten what it means to face a species that will not bend. The humans have reminded us. They have shown us that the galaxy is larger than our assumptions. That strength can take forms we do not expect. That silence can be more dangerous than any threat. He looked at directly. The humans have offered us a choice. We can fight them and lose. We can try to destroy them and fail. Or we can accept them as they are and learn what partnership with equals truly means. The chamber erupted again, but this time there was something different in the noise. Fear, uncertainty, the beginning of understanding that the universe had changed. Far away on Earth, Director Park stood at the memorial of the long silence. It was a simple monument, a black stone pillar inscribed with the date of the first alien transmission and the date of humanity's first response. 347 years of watching, 347 years of waiting, 347 years of building the strength to speak. Lieutenant walked up beside him, holding a tablet with the official response from the Galactic Concord. Her hands were trembling slightly, not with fear, but with the knowledge of what this moment meant. "They have accepted our terms," she said softly. "All of them, full equality, complete sovereignty, immediate membership." Nodded slowly. He had expected nothing less. The Conquered had built their empire on the assumption that no one could say no. Now they faced a species that could, and they had no response except acceptance. "How did we know?" asked. "How did we know that staying silent would work?" Thought about his grandfather, who had decoded the first alien message. He thought about the thousands of scientists, engineers, and soldiers who had dedicated their lives to a secret war they could never discuss. He thought about the leaders who had set aside their differences to prepare for a threat that might never come. "We did not know," he admitted. "We hoped. We prepared. We did everything we could to make sure that when we finally spoke, our words would matter." He looked up at the stars, visible now in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Concord was adjusting to a new reality. Somewhere out there, dozens of species were hearing for the first time that someone had stood up to the Empire and won. "What happens now?" asked. Smiled, a rare expression on his weathered face. "Now we show them who we really are, not the primitives they imagined, not the warriors who defeated their fleet. The truth. Humans in all our complexity. Our art, our music, our stories. Our capacity for kindness and our talent for violence. Our endless curiosity and our stubborn determination." He turned away from the memorial and began walking back toward the command center. There was work to be done, diplomatic relations to establish, a galaxy to change. "They spent 3 centuries wondering why we stayed quiet," he said. "Now they will spend the next 3 centuries learning why our voice was worth waiting for." Behind him, the stars continued their ancient dance, unchanged by the events unfolding below. But the galaxy was different now. The silence had ended. Earth had spoken. And the universe would never be the same.